At 2:13 in the morning, my house makes a very specific sound when something's wrong outside. Metal on concrete. A hollow clang. Then the rush of water where there shouldn't be any. I woke up, stared at the red digits on the nightstand. 2:13 a.m. That's not raccoon o'clock. That's some idiot is touching my job site o'clock. So I swung my legs out of bed, pulled on my work boots, grabbed my flashlight, and before I even touched the door, I opened a live feed from the cameras I'd mounted over my driveway in trench forms. The screen lit up the bedroom. There, in the harsh infrared glow, was Brittany Klein, our precious community standards director, in yoga pants, HOA badge lanyard swinging, going absolutely feral on my work site. She was kicking over my cones, yanking out survey stakes, fumbling with the storm drain valve I had tagged and sealed 15 hours earlier, talking to herself, waving her phone around like she was filming some heroic HOA sting operation. I watched her pry at the seal with a screwdriver, heard the pop through the camera mic, then the low roar of water surging where it had no business going. Right then, I knew she wasn't just breaking rules. She was trying to erase something. But what she didn't know was that every second of her little 2:13 a.m. meltdown was being recorded in full color, with timestamp and audio. If you've ever dealt with a power-drunk HOA, you'll want to stick around for this one, and subscribe so you don't miss how badly this backfired on her. I didn't move to Palmetto Pines Reserve because I love rules. I moved there because I was tired of fixing other people's bad drainage and coming home to my own front walk crumbling like a stale cookie. Name's Hank Mercer. I pour concrete for a living. Driveways, sidewalks, drainage swales, culvert ends, ADA ramps. If it's gray and hard and supposed to move water away from houses, I've probably worked on one just like it somewhere in Central Florida. When you do that long enough, you start to see neighborhoods different than most folks. Other people see pretty lakes and resort-style entrances. I see undersized culverts, crushed pipes, and grades that are off by just enough that one day some lawyer's going to have a very good afternoon. Palmetto Pines was supposed to be my break from that. My ex got the townhouse. I got my truck, my tools, and whatever was left of my credit. A buddy of mine in permitting told me about this older place on the edge of Orlando, built before the big boom, but still under a very proud HOA. Corner lot, decent garage, room to park my work trailer without street parking. Price was right, foundation wasn't cracked, and the slab passed my personal stomp test. I read the CCRs like a man reads a contract for a job he actually wants to get paid for. No commercial operations in the garage, sure. No compressors before 8 a.m., fine. Work vehicles allowed if they fit in the driveway and didn't block the sidewalk. That last line was the important one. My truck says Mercer Concrete and Drainage on the door in big blue letters. It's not a hobby. It's how I pay the mortgage. First time I rolled through the gate, I saw the little Palmetto Pines Reserve, a deed-restricted community sign, and the fake waterfall burbling away into a retention pond that was definitely too shallow. I shook my head, laughed, and thought some engineers signed off on that. Not my circus. The house itself was fine. Stucco, tile roof, the usual Florida beige. Back fence line ran along a grass easement that sloped gently down toward one of the neighborhood's many lakes, which is a fancy way of saying giant hole where everyone's stormwater goes and the HOA pretends is natural. I noticed the first problem on day 2, standing in my driveway drinking my coffee. The sidewalk in front of my place had a settled panel, just enough of a lip to catch a stroller wheel. The driveway apron was spider-cracked, and there was a hairline running straight from the corner of my garage slab out toward the street. You could follow it like a map right to the nearest storm inlet. I bent down, ran my hand over the crack, and looked up the street. Every third driveway had the same thing, subsidence along the same line. To me, it was like someone had taken a highlighter to the underlying drainage. Storm line's too shallow or bedding's junk, I muttered. Or both. Normally, that would just be an observation. But then the summer storms rolled in. If you've never seen a Florida afternoon storm, imagine someone flipping a switch on the sky. One minute it's bright, the next minute it's like standing behind a waterfall. First real gully washer of June, I stood in the garage and watched water pour down the street. Except it didn't pour right. Instead of hugging the gutter and heading for the inlet, it hit that low spot by my driveway, eddied, and climbed up over the edge of the sidewalk. Within 10 minutes, I had a sheet of water creeping across my front walk and nosing toward my garage like it was casing the joint. I checked the inlet. The grate was half submerged, and the flow sounded wrong. More of a muffled glug than a clean rush. You do this long enough, your ears know when water's moving the way it's supposed to. I told myself it was just a heavy storm, but the same pattern repeated week after week. Each time, that settled panel sank a little more. Each time, the water line on the curb stain crept a bit higher. That's when the professional and the homeowner in me finally shook hands. Look, I don't bring work home for fun, but I also don't sit around while my front walk turns into a slip-and-fall lawsuit waiting to happen. So I did what I always do before I touch a shovel. I read the rules and I pulled the paperwork. County records showed the main storm line running right under that sidewalk and apron tied into the lake behind the house. The HOA and RS said homeowners were responsible for their driveways and walks. HOA was responsible for common drainage infrastructure. That little line would matter later. I sketched out a simple fix in my notebook, cut the bad panel, expose the pipe, inspect the bedding, re-pour the apron with proper slope back to the street. Nothing fancy. Standard Tuesday kind of job. I figured I'd file the architectural request with the HOA as a courtesy, not because they really had any say. It was on my property, on my dime, up to code. For a little while, it felt like I'd found a place where I could work, sleep, and not think about other people's mistakes. And for a little while, it really did seem like we'd actually found some peace. Right up until the first friendly reminder from the HOA showed up in my mailbox and turned into something a lot uglier. The friendly reminder came on HOA letterhead thick enough to shim a door. Dear Mr. Mercer, this is a courtesy notice that commercial vehicles are not permitted to be parked in driveways overnight. I actually laughed. I had the CC and RS in a binder in my kitchen drawer. I'd highlighted the line. Work vehicles are permitted if they fit in the driveway and do not block the sidewalk. I figured it was a mix-up, so I called the number at the bottom. Palmetto Pines Community Standards, this is Brittany, a bright, fake voice answered. Yeah, this is Hank Mercer on Cattail Court. I got a notice about my truck. Your own rules say I'm fine. There was a pause, then a little sniff. Sir, Palmetto Pines is a residential community. Your industrial vehicle isn't in line with our aesthetic. It's a 3/4-ton Chevy with a logo, not a cement mixer parked on the lawn. I'm looking at the photos, she said, papers shuffling. You have a trailer. There are tools visible. That violates Section 7. 3. Materials and equipment. I close my eyes. Section 7. 3 says no lumber piles and no loose construction debris. My trailer's locked. That's not materials. That's my livelihood. Her tone sharpened. We don't allow people to run businesses out of their garages, Mr. Mercer. The board feels. I pour concrete all over Orange County. I cut in. I leave at 6. I'm back by 5. And I don't bring customers home. You'll never even know I'm here, unless your sidewalk caves in and you need me. She gave a tight little laugh that didn't reach her voice. We'll be monitoring the situation. Click. At that point, I figured, okay, just a textbook HOA busybody. Annoying, but survivable. Then I filed my architectural request to repair the settled panel and apron. I attached a clean drawing, measurements, even cited the county detail for residential driveways. I wrote, plain English, existing drainage appears inadequate. Will expose pipe, verify slope, and restore concrete to original footprint. I put it in their box at the clubhouse and went back to my jobs. 3 days later, I got an email from Community Standards Director, Palmetto Pines Reserve. Brittany's name was right under the logo. Your request is denied. Homeowners are not authorized to alter or access HOA stormwater infrastructure. Any excavation without prior board-approved contractor may result in fines and restoration fees. I read it twice. She'd copied the whole board. No reason, no alternate solution. Just no in bold. I walked out front, stared at the sunken panel, and watched as a mom pushing a stroller had to bump down off the curb and go around through the gutter rather than risk the trip edge. That's when the subtle stuff started. One evening, I came home to find a fluorescent orange sticker slapped on my trailer. Unauthorized equipment. Remove immediately. My neighbors, Mark and Tasha, were standing in their yard pretending not to look. Tasha finally wandered over. "Hey, Hank." Brittany posted in the Facebook group about an unlicensed contractor doing unsafe work on this street. She didn't say your name, but let me guess, I said. "Photos of my truck." "And cones," Mark added. She said someone was staging a commercial operation. People are talking. I didn't even have a shovel in the ground yet. All I'd done was set a couple of cones by the settled slab with a strip of caution tape so delivery drivers wouldn't twist an ankle. The next day, security patrol slowed to a crawl in front of my place. The driver rolled down his window. "Evening," I said. "Got a report about construction materials stored in view," he said, looking pointedly at my neatly stacked bag of Quikrete and a form board leaning against the garage. "That's 10 minutes of work when I start," I said. "Not storage." He smirked. "Just doing my job, Ms. Klein's very particular." By the end of the week, there were comment threads online about that contractor house on Cattail. People who'd never said 2 words to me in person suddenly had strong opinions about noise, trucks, and property values. I started noticing conversations cut off when I walked by. Kids who used to ride scooters past my driveway made a wide arc around my cones now, like the concrete was contagious. At that point, I still thought I was dealing with one bored Karen with a title and too much Wi-Fi. I had no idea this was just Brittany's first test shot and that she was about to drag this fight from petty notes straight into my bank account. If you've ever had an HOA nitpick you into insanity, hit the like button so this story gets pushed to more people who need to hear it. The thing about concrete is it cracks where the stress is. People aren't much different. After Brittany's denial email, the stress line in the neighborhood started to show. It started small. I'd be loading my truck at 6:30, same as always, and spot blinds twitching up and down the street like a synchronized dance. The Facebook whispers turned into real-world frost. The following Friday, I came home to a glossy newsletter rubber-banded to my doorknob. Palmetto Pines Reserve Community Update. On the front page, a stock photo of a smiling family on a perfect sidewalk. Under it, an article byline by Community Standards Director B. Klein. Headline, "Protecting Our Neighborhood from Unlicensed Contractors." I leaned against my truck and read it. She never used my name, but she didn't have to. Recently, an individual on Cattail Court began staging construction equipment and hazardous materials in a way that could endanger children and pets. Hazardous materials. She meant Portland cement. There was a whole paragraph about how only board-approved vendors were allowed to touch critical infrastructure like sidewalks and drainage. She threw around phrases like liability exposure and safety concerns like she'd swallowed a legal podcast. Tasha caught my eye from across the street. She gave me a helpless little shrug, newsletter in hand. "You saw," she mouthed. I held up mine. "Nice to know I'm famous," I said. The next HOA board meeting, I showed up. Polo shirt, clean jeans, work boots still dusted with real life. The clubhouse multipurpose room smelled like coffee and fake citrus cleaner. Fold-out chairs, a long table up front, little name placards. Brittany sat dead center with a binder the size of cinder block, HOA badge gleaming like it meant something. She clocked me as soon as I walked in. Her smile tightened. She whispered to the board president, a guy named Doug who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. When they opened the floor for homeowner comments, I stood. "Name and address?" Doug asked. "Hank Mercer, for 112 Cattail. I'm the individual from your newsletter." A couple of people chuckled, then caught themselves. I kept my voice level. "I do concrete and drainage all over this county. I pulled your CC and RS and the county plats. My driveway and walk are my responsibility. Your storm line is yours. I asked to repair my slab because it's settling over your pipe. You denied it. Meanwhile, that trip edge out, there's one stroller mishap away from a lawsuit." Brittany leaned into her mic. "Mr. Mercer, this is not the venue to debate enforcement actions. The board has a duty to maintain the aesthetic and safety standards of Palmetto Pines." "Funny," I said, "because right now you're failing at both." I pointed toward the door. "Water's not moving where it should. You've got undermining along that whole run. I've seen it 1,000 times. It doesn't care about your newsletter." Her eyes flashed. We have an engineering report from our vendor that says everything is functioning within design parameters. Your vendor, I repeated, the same one that repaired the line 3 years ago by the lake? The patch job that's already spalling? A murmur ran through the room. People remember the orange fences and the do not enter signs that had sat up for months. Brittany's jaw clenched. Those repairs were board approved and passed inspection. Sure, I said. Passed just fine until the next rainy season. Doug cleared his throat. Mr. Mercer, we appreciate your expertise, but this isn't on the agenda. Translation: sit down and shut up. I sat, because I know when a pour isn't ready yet. You don't rush it, you let cure. The real work started after that meeting. The social squeeze tightened. A week later, my mailbox held a notice of violation, failure to maintain property. Apparently, my construction staging, those 2 bags of mix and 3-form boards, was unsightly and created a perception of ongoing commercial activity. $50 fine. 2 days after, another notice. Parking violation, commercial vehicle visible from street. $80. Same truck, same driveway, different letterhead ink. Then came the Facebook blast. A neighbor I barely knew, Kelsey from around the corner, DM'd me screenshots. Brittany had posted in the residence group, urgent. Please be aware of unsafe conditions on Cattail Court. The board is addressing an individual performing unauthorized work near HOA drainage. For your children's safety, avoid that area until further notice. Underneath, the comments piled up. Wow, thanks for looking out for us. Is that the guy with the loud truck? I saw cones. It looked so sketchy. Nobody tagged me. Nobody asked me. They just let the story pour, following the slope Brittany had set. Kids stopped cutting across my lawn. A jogger who used a wave now stared straight ahead like my house was a crime scene. Even Mark started parking with his car pointed away from my driveway, like guilt might be contagious in the reflection of his windshield. And every few days, like clockwork, security patrol would creep by, slow down, and snap a photo. I caught one of them one afternoon, camera still in hand. You get paid by the picture? I asked. He shifted in his seat. Ma'am says document everything. Ma'am, not the board, not the HOA. Ma'am. I walked back to my garage, that settled slab winking at me like a cracked tooth. Every gossip, every fine, every sideways glance just traced the same line, from my driveway to that storm inlet to the lake. They thought the pressure would make me fold. Sell the truck, move the trailer, forget about the slab, shut up about the drainage. But here's the thing Brittany didn't understand. You can only stack so much weight on bad ground before something gives. And every nasty note, every meeting, every petty little friendly reminder, I was filing it away, one by one, in a manila folder in my office with a piece of blue tape on the front. On the tape, I'd written one word in Sharpie, HOA. They just thought they were wearing me down. They hadn't realized yet that every scrap of paper, every rumor, every photo was getting poured into a form I'd eventually strip off in front of all of them. Because the HOA still hadn't figured out that each little shove they gave me was just more weight on their own cracks, and that folder was going to be the foundation of their problem. The concrete war got real the day the envelopes turned yellow. Up until then, it was 50 here, 80 there. Annoying, but like hairline cracks, you live with them. Then I opened my mailbox and found a certified letter from Palmetto Pines Reserve Compliance Division. Final notice before legal action. Inside was a multi-page masterpiece. They'd stacked everything. Continuing parking violation, commercial vehicle. Unauthorized storage of construction materials. Failure to comply with architectural denial. Every made-up offense came with a line item. Late fees. Administrative processing fees. Threat of lien placement, if unpaid. Total at the bottom, in bold, $1,840. 00. For parking my truck in my driveway and daring to suggest I might fix their failing concrete. I stood at the kitchen counter, thumb tapping the total. I pay suppliers less grief for pallets of rebar. That same afternoon, a knock on the door. Not a friendly one, short, sharp cop style. I opened it to find the security patrol guy from before, this time with a clipboard, and behind him, Brittany in full regalia. HOA badge, tablet, little smirk. Mr. Mercer, she said like she was reading my name off a citation. We're here to perform a compliance inspection. For what? I asked. She swept her hand toward my garage. Unapproved construction activity, potential encroachment into HOA drainage easement, and safety hazards. I looked past her. My driveway had exactly what it always had. My truck, my closed trailer, 2 cones by the settled slab, so Amazon didn't faceplant. You need a warrant for inside the house, I said, but the driveway's where I work, so knock yourself out. As long as you stay on my property. She didn't like that. Her jaw tightened a notch. But she walked up the drive, security guy trailing, phone out recording like I was mid-drug bust. She crouched by the cones. This is an unpermitted excavation site. I almost laughed. That's a trip hazard I've marked, so your newsletter stories don't come true. She ignored me, tapping on her tablet. I am entering a violation for unauthorized modification of common infrastructure. You are not allowed to alter or inspect HOA drainage equipment. Any attempt to access that line will be treated as vandalism. There is no common infrastructure on my deed, I said. Your pipe runs under my slab in an easement. Big difference. She straightened up, eyes going flat. If you touch it, we will fine you for every day of noncompliance. And if you continue to conduct business from this address, the board is prepared to pursue legal remedies, including a lien. There it was. Not just annoyance. Threat. She wanted me choosing between my mortgage and my truck. Security guy took a few more photos, careful to get my logo, my license number on the trailer. Brittany lingered just long enough to let the neighbors see her there, authoritative and upright, me standing in dusty boots looking like the perp. When they finally left, my phone buzzed. New email. Inspection report. Immediate action required. It was time-stamped 3 minutes before they'd even knocked. That's when it clicked. This wasn't about rules. This was about leverage. If she could paint me as a chronic violator, all the board had to do was keep stacking fines until the numbers got stupid. People like me don't have lawyers on retainer. A lien notice scares most folks into selling cheap or shutting up. That night the rain came hard. I stood in the garage again, watching water pool exactly where I'd been trying to fix. It climbed the gutter line, pushed up over the settled panel, and ran almost to my threshold before finally edging back. Next morning, there was a new crack, a little diagonal runner bridging my driveway to the sidewalk. The kind of thing you only see if you know what you're looking at. All right, I told the empty air, you want to play with money and safety? We'll play. I took every notice, every inspection photo they'd so helpfully sent, every screenshot of Brittany's posts, and slid them into the blue-taped HOA folder. The stack was getting thick. Heavy. Then I did something that, to Brittany, probably looked like surrender. I moved my trailer 2 feet back, just enough that it sat clear behind the sidewalk line. I rolled the extra bags of mix into the garage. I took down the caution tape and replaced it with a clean, Oshie yellow barricade bar and a printed sign. Caution. Pending repair. Trip hazard. Cited the exact Florida statute on sidewalk maintenance. On paper, I was suddenly the most compliant man in Palmetto Pines. But in my head, the job had changed. This wasn't just about fixing a slab anymore. This was about what that slab was sitting on and why Brittany was so desperate to keep me from touching it. Because the day they turned my driveway into a balance sheet with 4 figures of bogus fines was the day I understood they weren't going to stop. Not with letters, not with gossip, not with threats of liens. If I didn't do something smarter than yelling at a board meeting, they'd eventually grind me down and move on to the next working stiff with a logo on his truck. And standing there, looking at that fresh new crack and that fat yellow final notice, I made a quiet decision. I wasn't going to give them a bigger check. I was going to give them a bigger problem. If you've ever had an HOA try to bleed you with fines, drop a comment with how far they pushed it, because what they did next made those $1,800 look like pocket change. There's a moment on every job when you realize you're not just fixing concrete, you're fixing somebody else's lie. That yellow final notice was that moment for me. I sat at my kitchen table, HOA folder open, bills spread out like a bad poker hand. They thought they had me pinned between my mortgage and my license. I could almost hear Brittany saying it. Guys like him can't afford a fight. Thing is, I don't fight the way she does. I don't scream in meetings or spam Facebook. I do what I've always done. I read the plans, I walk the site, and I let the ground tell me the truth. So I went back to basics. First stop, my office in the spare bedroom. Metal desk, squeaky chair, and a file drawer labeled codes and details. I pulled the county stormwater manual, the subdivision plats, and the original drainage plans my buddy in permitting had emailed me months back. From a bird's eye view, Cattail Court was just a curve of cul-de-sac. But the storm lines told a different story. The main run under my sidewalk was supposed to be a straight shot to the lake, minimum cover, proper bedding, clean-outs at set intervals. Except my driveway crack, that settled panel, and the way the water was behaving all said something had been disturbed. Repaired. Badly. City records backed it up. 3 years ago. Emergency storm line repair, contractor, Suncoast Environmental Services. Same company that Brittany had defended at the board meeting. I'd seen their slapdash work around town. Cheap pipe, thinner cover, concrete patches that looked fine for one season and then disintegrated. I ran my finger along the plan where their work started and stopped. Right under my apron. Right where my slab was failing. Right where Brittany went nuclear when I mentioned exposing the pipe. So this wasn't just HOA stubbornness. This was liability. If I cut my slab and exposed a non-compliant repair sitting in what's technically an HOA easement, now we're talking civil exposure, maybe insurance fraud if they'd certified it as built to code. At minimum, a 6-figure fix if the city got involved. Suddenly her denial email, the fines, the threats of vandalism if I touched the line. It all lined up. She wasn't protecting the neighborhood from me. She was protecting the HOA from what I might uncover. That changed my role. Up to then, I'd been the guy with the annoying truck. The contractor house. The easy villain for her newsletter. But out in the real world, on actual job sites, I'm something she doesn't believe exists. The blue-collar guy who knows the code better than the clipboard crowd. I've spent 20-plus years pouring to spec, failing inspections, passing re-inspections, standing in the rain with county engineers arguing about 0.5% of slope. I know exactly how much cover those pipes are supposed to have. I know what a legal valve seal looks like. I know which inspectors answer their phones on the first ring because I buy them coffee when they're stuck out on hot sites. Brittany had a badge on a lanyard. I had their plans, their past permits, and a phone full of numbers for people whose signatures actually mean something. That's when I stopped reacting and started planning. I upgraded my cameras, swapped the front yard dome for a higher res unit with a wider field of view, set motion zones tighter over the trench forms and the storm inlet, cranked up audio gain. Not paranoia, just job site security, same as I'd do guarding tools on a commercial pour. I walked the street at dusk, tape measure in hand like I was just some obsessive concrete guy. And sure I am. Measured every settled panel, every crack tracing back to that same line. Took photos, date stamped, wide shot, and close up. Neighbors looked out, saw Hank being Hank, and went back to their TVs. Then I made a call to someone Brittany didn't know existed in this equation. Stormwater compliance, this is Diaz, the voice on the other end said. Diaz, it's Mercer. Remember that church parking lot on Colonial we had to rip out because the outfall was 6 inches too high? He groaned. Don't remind me. What's up, Hank? I've got a residential HOA sitting on top of a bad repair your records show as completed. Water's ponding, sidewalks tripping, and they're threatening me with liens if I even look at the pipe. He whistled softly. You got photos? Got more than that, I said. I think they know it's non-compliant. They're panicking every time I mention expose the line. Email me what you've got, he said. If it smells like a cover-up, we'll take a sniff. I hung up, labeled a new folder on my desktop. Palmetto Drainage. Dropped into plats, the permit history, the newsletter, the denial email, and every fine they'd sent. Cross-reference dates with rainfall totals from the Weather Service. It wasn't a legal brief. It was just a clean job log the way I'd document any big pour. Standing there in my little office, I realized something Brittany never would. This wasn't going to be one on Facebook or at some shouting match in the clubhouse. This was going to be one with physics, paper, and patience. From that moment on, I stopped thinking of myself as the guy under attack. I was the inspector they didn't know they'd hired. And whether they liked it or not, the site review had just started. I stopped reacting to Brittany's moves and started setting the forms for something bigger. I didn't know exactly how they'd step in it yet, but with the way she was spiraling, I knew one thing for sure. All I had to do was let her keep pushing, and sooner or later, she'd give me the perfect, recorded mistake to pour the whole case around. From that night on, my house stopped being just a house and turned into a job site with one really big, really stupid client, the HOA. You don't walk onto a job and start swinging a sledge. First, you mark utilities, shoot your grades, take photos. Same thing here. I treated palmetto pines like a slab I was about to demo. First thing I did was a slow walk of the block right after a storm. Tape measure in one hand, clipboard in the other, phone in my pocket recording video. I measured how deep the water sat in each gutter, how far it crept up over the sidewalk, how long it took to drain. I narrated in that flat, job site voice inspectors love. Standing water, 90 minutes post-rain, cattail court. This gutter is holding almost an inch. That's not maintenance. That's design or install failure. Neighbors figured I was just being that concrete guy again, which was fine. Let them underestimate it. Back home, I laid everything out on my dining table like a set of plans. On the left, HOA junk, fines, letters, Brittany's newsletter, her emails. On the right, my stuff, county plats, stormwater manual, photos, notes, screenshot from the residents' Facebook group where she'd hinted I was tampering with drainage. Then I went digital. I set up a real folder structure on my laptop like I would for a big commercial job. 01, site photos. 02, correspondence. 03, plans and permits. 04, violations. Every PDF they sent me went in with a full email header. Every notice got scanned front and back. I even saved the envelope from that yellow final notice. Postmark dates matter. The cameras got an upgrade too. I swapped the SD card on my driveway cam for a bigger one, turned on redundant cloud backup, and drew motion zones tight around three things: the sunken panel, the storm inlet, and my barricade. Anything or anyone messed with those, I wanted their pours in 1080p. Out on the street, I started asking quiet questions. "Hey, Mark," I said one evening while we watched another storm roll in. "You remember that big mess by the lake a few years back? With the orange fence and the pump truck?" He nodded. "Yeah, HOA said some contractor had to upgrade the drainage. Took forever." "Suncoast Environmental?" I asked like I was just making conversation. "Think so." Brittany was all over Facebook about how she negotiated a great deal. "Why?" "Just wondering who to send a Christmas card to," I said. At night, I'd sit at my desk and cross-reference. County permit hashtag #1493. Emergency line repair, contractor Suncoast, signed off by Inspector R. Diaz. Same date range as those orange fences Mark remembered. I printed the permit, highlighted the section that said installation per county detail SW12, minimum 18 cover. Then I laid that next to my crack map. The cracks didn't lie. They lined up dead over the trench where the repair was supposed to be. Too shallow, too soft, bad bedding. I'd seen that movie 100 times, and the ending was always the same. Undermined slab, angry homeowners, expensive tear out. I sent Diaz a neat little packet. No drama, just facts. Photos attached show ponding, trip hazards, and probable shallow cover over previously repaired line. HOA is actively preventing inspection and homeowner maintenance. Recommend independent site visit. He wrote back the next morning. "Got it. I'll swing by unofficially first. Don't touch anything for now." Message received. I kept my tools off the slab and my hands off the inlet. I wanted zero question later about who did what when. Meanwhile, Brittany kept giving me free material. New email. Any attempt to alter or inspect HOA drainage will be considered vandalism. Screenshot. Saved. New Facebook post. The board is monitoring a situation on Cattail involving an individual who insists on interfering with HOA infrastructure. Screenshot. Saved. Every time she said monitoring, I smiled. She thought she was watching me. She had no idea I was the one building the record. The last piece I needed wasn't paperwork or pictures. It was behavior. People under real pressure do dumb things. They rush pours, skip rebar, cut corners. Or, if they're a power-drunk HOA Karen sitting on a bad repair, They start acting like the storm line under one guy's driveway is a national security secret. So I waited. I kept my driveway neat, my truck inside the property line, my trailer pulled back just so. No new violations. Nothing she could hang a fresh fine on. Just that barricaded, obviously sinking panel sitting there like a loose tooth. I knew, sooner or later, she wouldn't be able to leave it alone. Because for all her emails about aesthetics and community standards, there was one thing she couldn't standardize. That crack getting a little worse every rain, right where her great deal with Suncoast had been buried. All I needed now was for Brittany to step over the line one more time. Physically, not just on paper. I'd built the forms. I had the plans, the history, the contacts, the cameras. Now I just needed her to pour her own mistake right into the middle of it. And when she finally did, in the middle of the night at 2:13 a.m., I made sure every second of it was ready to be stamped, saved, and shown to exactly the right people. If you're still here watching this mess unfold, make sure you're subscribed, because the way she chose to fix that drain in the dark is hands down the dumbest thing I've ever seen an HOA officer do on camera. The funny thing is, the night that gave me everything I needed didn't start dramatic. It started stupidly normal. It was a Thursday. I put in a 12-hour pour on a commercial ramp, came home, showered off the lime dust, and crashed by 10. My barricade was still out front over the sunken panel, my cameras humming, cloud backup ticking away. I'd done my walk around like it was a job site. Cone straight, sign clean, nothing anyone sane could call debris. At some point, the rain came through, one of those late-night Florida showers that just whispers on the roof instead of hammering it. I barely stirred. Then, metal on concrete. A hollow, ugly clang. Water where it shouldn't be. My eyes snapped open. Years of dawn starts and overnight pours will train your body better than any alarm clock. I looked at the red digits. 2:13 a.m. That is not raccoon time. That's human making bad choices around infrastructure time. I didn't go charging out the door. Never rush a slab. Never rush a situation. I swung my legs over, pulled on my work boots, grabbed my flashlight, but before I even hit the hallway, I thumbed open the security app on my phone. The driveway cam came up first. Grainy infrared flipped to full color as the sensor adjusted. And there she was. Brittany Klein. Yoga pants. HOA lanyard swinging. Hair in a messy bun that screamed, "I'm doing something I know I shouldn't." She was in my driveway like she owned it, one cone already kicked aside. My barricade was half shoved off the slab. She had a little LED headlamp on, stabbing light into the gap by the settled panel. In one hand, her phone. In the other, what looked like a flathead screwdriver and a cheap adjustable wrench. I muted my own mic so I wouldn't accidentally breathe too loud and spook the feed. Then I swapped to the cam pointed at the storm inlet. That's when my stomach did a slow, angry roll. She wasn't just kicking cones and taking pictures for her next Facebook crusade. She was down on one knee at the HOA valve box that tied the line under my driveway into the main run. The same valve Suncoast should have set and sealed when they did their emergency repair. 15 hours earlier, I'd walk by and check that seal out of habit. Intact, factory tag still on, a dab of red epoxy over the nut. Tonight, on my screen, I watched her pry at that epoxy with a screwdriver like she was opening a paint can. "Come on, you stupid thing," she hissed. The camera mic grabbed every word, clear as a job site foreman screaming orders. If anybody inspects this, we're screwed. There it was. Not just vandalism. Motive. She jammed the wrench onto the valve stem and cranked. Hard. There was a little metallic pop, then a low rumble through the concrete. The sound of water changing direction where it absolutely was not supposed to. My hand tightened on the flashlight. Every instinct I had, from protect your tools to don't let idiots touch working systems, wanted me out there. But the inspector part of my brain, the one that's watched more contractors hang themselves with their own shortcuts, told me to stay put. Don't interrupt a bad pour. Let fail. So I watched. Brittany held her phone out, filming herself at my driveway like she was on some HOA reality show. This is documentation of unauthorized construction activity at 2:13 a.m., she whispered dramatically, completely missing that she'd just documented herself. Homeowner's barricade is blocking access to HOA drainage. I'm restoring proper function before someone gets hurt. She wasn't restoring anything. She was spinning the valve, slamming my barricade aside, and yanking out the survey stake I'd put in the grass to mark the low spot. Each move was another little crime. Trespass, tampering with drainage, destroying safety markings. Blame the contractor, fix the optics, hide the bad repair. I murmured to myself. Got it. I backed the feed up 10 seconds, hit record on my phone, and started screen capture. Timestamp in the corner. 2 hours, 13 minutes, and 7 seconds. 2 hours, 13 minutes, and 12 seconds. 2 hours, 13 minutes, and 18 seconds. Her badge swung into frame. You could read her name. She gave the valve one last angry twist. Somewhere under my slab, I heard the low surge of redirected water. On the driveway cam, a thin sheet started bubbling up through a hairline I hadn't seen before, right where Suncoast Trench would be. Brittany saw it too. "Oh, no, no, no," she muttered. "Not again." Then, louder, to her own video, "You see? His unauthorized excavation has compromised the line." "Lady, I thought you were literally on camera doing the compromising." She fiddled with the valve again, trying to half close it, half open it, anything to make the sound stop. Finally, she stood, breathing hard, kicked my cone one more time for good measure, and power walked back to her SUV. Taillights flared, then disappeared into the dark. I let the feed run another 5 minutes, watching the dark, wet patch on my slab grow, then stabilize. When I was sure she was gone, I hit stop on the screen record and saved it 3 different ways: local, cloud, and copied to a thumb drive I kept at my desk. Then I did what I do on any compromised site. I grabbed my own camera, the handheld one I use for before and after shots, stepped outside, and filmed the scene like it was evidence. Because it was. I kept my voice flat, just like I'd talk to an inspector. Time is now 2:29 a.m. Barricade has been moved from original position. HOA valve seal appears broken. Tag missing, epoxy disturbed. Audible change in flow occurred at approximately 2:13 a.m., coinciding with manipulation of valve by HOA representative. Standing water now present at previously dry crack. I zoomed tight on the scraped epoxy, the scuffed concrete where her shoes had slid, the fresh scrape on my cone. Little details juries and engineers like. Once everything was documented, I shut off the outside lights and went back in. No confrontation, no yelling match in the cul-de-sac. Just a tired concrete guy who now had exactly what he'd been waiting for. Proof that Brittany would rather secretly tamper with a drainage system at 2 in the morning than let me legally expose a bad repair. Before my head hit the pillow again, I sent one email. Subject line: Palmetto, after hours tampering at storm valve video attached. 2. Diaz, stormwater compliance. CC, the general inspections inbox. Footage capture approximate. 2:13 a.m. shows HOA Community Standards Director manipulating sealed valve at emergency repair location. Resulting flow change and ponding attached. Strongly recommend formal inspection. Homeowner has not altered system. I attached the video, the stills, and a photo of my microwave clock reading 2:28 a.m. just to cross-check the timestamps. Then I finally went back to bed. Brittany thought she'd snuck in under cover of darkness to rewrite the story and pin it on the contractor house. What she didn't know was that her little 2:13 a.m. hero mission was now the centerpiece of a file sitting on a county server, ready to be played back frame by frame. And when she came at me the next day with her usual routine, accusations, fines, big talk about vandalism, she had no idea she was already standing ankle-deep in the wet concrete of her own downfall. Because the second she walked into that next HOA meeting to put on a show, the stage was already set, and her meltdown was about to go from late-night secret to main-screen entertainment for the entire neighborhood. The board chose a Tuesday night for my public execution. The clubhouse was packed. Folding chairs, people standing in the back, the hum of neighbors who'd all read Brittany's latest email blast about an escalating safety situation on Cattail Court. I sat in the second row, clean jeans, work boots, HOA folder in my lap. Up front, Brittany had her game face on, blazer over her yoga top, hair slicked back, HOA badge front and center. She shuffled papers like a prosecutor. Doug, the board president, tapped the mic. Next item, enforcement actions regarding 412 Cattail. Brittany didn't wait. She slid her chair up, took the mic. We have a serious issue, she announced, sweeping the room with that practiced, tragic look. Despite repeated warnings, Mr. Mercer has continued to interfere with HOA drainage infrastructure. 2 nights ago, I personally observed unsafe conditions at his property at approximately 2:13 a.m. Murmurs. Head swiveled toward me. She held up a stack of glossy photos, my driveway, my cones, the barricade she'd shoved aside and then carefully restaged later. You can see here the unauthorized barricade, the tampering with our valve box. I almost smiled. Furthermore, she went on, voice tightening with righteous fury, I feared for the safety of this community. I had to step in at great personal risk to restore proper flow before a catastrophic failure. I'm recommending immediate fines, a cease and desist of all construction activity, and referral to legal counsel for potential vandalism charges. A guy in the back muttered, lock him up, half joking, half not. Doug sighed into the mic. Mr. Mercer, do you wish to respond? I stood slowly, HOA folder under my arm, and walked to the little podium they'd set up for homeowner comments. My heart rate didn't move much. I've argued with inspectors standing in rain up to my ankles, a fluorescent-lit room, and some retirees weren't going to do worse. I've got 2 things, I said, 60 seconds and a USB drive. Brittany laughed, short and sharp. This isn't a tech support meeting, Hank. A few polite chuckles. I held up the thumb drive between 2 fingers. It's a video of the unsafe conditions at 2:13 a.m. You're going to want to see it before you decide who to fine. Doug looked at Brittany. She hesitated, then shrugged like, fine, let the idiot embarrass himself. There's a laptop right there, I said, nodding at their projector card. HDMI's already plugged in. One of the board members, Linda, took the drive from me with a wary look, slid it into the laptop. The projector flickered, then my driveway appeared on the screen, washed in infrared. Go to file mark 213M, valve, I said. The video started. Silence fell fast. There, 20 feet wide on the wall, was Brittany. Yoga pants, lanyard, headlamp, at my driveway in the middle of the night. They watched her kick my cone, shove my barricade, kneel at the valve box. Someone whispered, wait, that's Brittany. The audio came through the tinny speakers, but it might as well have been surround sound. Come on, you stupid thing, her voice crackled. If anybody inspects this, we're screwed. You could have heard a pin drop on a rubber floor. We watched her pry off the epoxy, wrench the valve, the low roar of water change, the little surge across my slab. We watched her film herself, breathless. This is documentation of unauthorized construction activity at 2:13 a.m. I'm restoring proper function before someone gets hurt. Then the angle switched to my second cam. Close-up of the broken seal, scraped concrete, my sign half shoved aside. My own flat narration. Time is now 2:29 a.m. HOA representative has manipulated previously sealed valve. Homeowner has not altered system. Linda hit pause. The frame froze on Brittany's face, caught mid-grimace, valve wrench in hand. Nobody laughed. A couple of people actually leaned back like the image might bite them. Doug cleared his throat, voice dry. Ms. Klein, did you, authorize an after-hours adjustment to the storm valve? Her face was the color of uncured slab. This is taken out of context, she snapped. He's obviously edited. I held up the HOA folder, thick with documents. There's no edit. That's straight off my license cameras. Full timestamp, same as your own inspection emails. And before anyone says fake, the city already has a copy. That landed like a sack of cement. A guy in a golf shirt turned around. The city, I nodded. Stormwater compliance. They're real interested in why your community standard director is breaking sealed valves on a 3-year-old repair that was signed off as to code. I tapped the permit printout in my folder, especially when she's saying, on tape, if anybody inspects this, we're screwed. Someone near the front whispered, insurance, another liability like dirty words. Brittany lunged for the mic. He's lying. He's harassing me. He threatened. I didn't raise my voice, just laid down the next slab. You also copied the entire board on an email calling me a vandal for tampering with that same valve 12 hours before this video, when your own seal was still intact. I printed it for you. I stepped up, placed a color still of the factory seal valve on the table in front of Doug. Same date, same time, no broken epoxy. Linda stared at the photo, then the frozen frame on the screen. So, before dawn, the seal was intact. After 2:13, it's broken. And the only person on camera touching it is she didn't finish. Your community standards director, I supplied. A guy from 3 rows back called out. You put fines on him for your screw-up? Another voice. My sidewalk's sinking too. Is that your great deal repair, Brittany? The room went from church silent to angry murmur fast. You could feel the weight shift, the stress cracking along a new line. Doug pinched the bridge of his nose. Mr. Mercer, does the city have any other concerns? Yeah, I said. They're sending an independent inspector. They've already flagged the line for a full review. They'll be looking at those old Suncoast repairs you're sitting on. Might want to start talking to your insurance carrier instead of my mailbox. Brittany slammed her binder shut. This is a smear. I have served this community for 6 years. I have protected. The guy in a golf shirt stood up, face red. Protected who? Yourself? You could have flooded his garage and blamed him. My kids ride bikes on that sidewalk. A woman raised her hand, voice shaking. You told us not to let them near that contractor house. You never said you were out there alone at 2 in the morning, opening valves. I stepped back from the podium. For the record, I said, calm as a finished pour, I never touched your pipe. I asked, in writing, to fix my slab over it. You threatened me with liens. You tried to make me your scapegoat for a bad job you buried. I just turned the cameras on. Doug looked like a man watching his retaining wall slide into a sinkhole. I need to go into executive session. No, someone snapped. We're staying right here. We live here. Voices rose. Suspend her. She needs to step down. How many other things did you hide? Brittany grabbed her bag, cheeks blazing. You're all being manipulated by a contractor with an axe to grind, she hissed. When this neighborhood floods, don't come crying to me. Pretty sure that's not going to be your job much longer, I said quietly. She shot me a look that could have etched concrete, then stormed out, HOA badge swinging like a cheap metal. On the wall, the projector still showed her frozen MI valve, wrench in hand, under the timestamp, 2:13 and 14 seconds a.m. Her reign didn't end with a gavel or some grand speech. It ended there, in a fluorescent room, in front of the neighbors she'd been scaring with newsletters, when they all saw what she really did when she thought nobody was watching. But exposing her in that room was only the first pass of the trowel. What happened after the city's inspector showed up and the insurance company saw that same footage cut a lot deeper, right into the HOA's wallet and their precious little tower of power. If you've ever fantasized about watching an HOA bully get hit where it really hurts, tell me in the comments what part of this takedown you enjoyed most, because the fallout from that video was somehow even messier than the meltdown itself. The board never made it back from executive session that night the way they thought they would. They shuffled out 20 minutes later, looking like they'd all just watched a slab cave in. Brittany was nowhere in sight. Doug cleared his throat, tapped the mic, and avoided eye contact with the crowd. Effective immediately, he said, voice stiff, the board has voted to place Ms. Klein on administrative leave, pending an independent review of recent enforcement actions and stormwater issues. All fines and violations related to 412 Cattail are hereby suspended. Suspended. Cute word. I stood up. Suspended isn't going to cut it, I said. You put a lien threat on my house. You called me a vandal and a safety hazard while your own officer was out there breaking seal valves at 2 in the morning. We're past oops. Linda met my eyes. She looked tired more than anything. Mr. Mercer, the city reached out this afternoon. Their inspector is coming out for a full review of the drainage repairs on Cattail and around the lake. We've already notified our insurance carrier. We will cooperate fully. I heard the word that mattered, insurance. A week later, a white city truck rolled into Palmetto Pines. Diaz stepped out in steel toes and a neon vest, clipboard under his arm. He nodded at me like we were on any other job. "Morning, Mercer." "Morning. You brought friends?" Behind him, another inspector, this one from the county risk office, and a woman in a blazer with the brutal smile of someone who bills by the quarter hour, HOA's insurance rep. Brittany was nowhere near the scene. Doug hovered by the sidewalk like a man watching workers dig near a gas line. Diaz walked the line slow, measured cover, probed the bedding, scraped at Suncoast's old patch on the inlet. He didn't say much, just the occasional low whistle through his teeth when he hit a soft spot. Finally, he straightened and looked at the group. "This repair is not per detail SW12, he said. "Cover's short, bedding's garbage, and that valve seal was absolutely tampered with after sign-off. You've got undermining from here to the lake. It's not a question of if you get a failure. It's when." The insurance rep's smile died. "What's the scope of correction?" Diaz flipped a page on his clipboard. "Minimum? Excavation of the run under the street and sidewalk, replacement to current code, compaction tests, and a new pour. You're not patching this with a bag of mix from Home Depot." She winced like he'd slapped her with a deductible. "Ballpark. 6 figures, he said. "And that's if nothing else ugly shows up between here and the outfall." Doug went pale. 6 figures. "Also," Diaz added, "given the video evidence of your officer breaking a sealed valve and altering flow, we're flagging this with legal. Any claim that results from flooding or injury along this run, your carrier's going to ask why you didn't control your own people." The rep turned slowly toward Doug. "We're going to need full documentation of Ms. Klein's authority, her communications with the contractor, and every enforcement action tied to this line. Today." For once, I stayed quiet. I didn't need to add anything. The slab was talking just fine. By the next board meeting, the tone had changed completely. Gone were the glossy newsletters about unlicensed contractors. In their place, emergency notices about mandatory drainage remediation, temporary lane closures, and anticipated special assessment under review. They try to spin it, of course. Out of an abundance of caution, the board has elected to upgrade our stormwater infrastructure. But you could see the crack in the story every time somebody glanced at me. When homeowner comments opened, a woman in the front row raised her hand. "So let me get this straight," she said. "You hired the cheapest contractor, buried a bad repair, let Brittany attack anyone who noticed, and now we're all paying to fix it?" Doug started his usual word salad. "There were many factors." Another guy cut in. "How about you start with firing her?" Linda took a breath. "Ms. Klein tendered her resignation, effective immediately," she said. "She is barred from holding any future position with the HOA. The board has also voted to rescind and void all fines and violations issued to Mr. Mercer. Formal apologies will be mailed." Every eye slid to me. I stood, walked to the mic, and kept it simple. "Keep your apology. Put it toward the repour. And next time some blue-collar guy tells you your concrete's lying to you, maybe listen before it costs everyone 6 figures." A few people actually clapped. Not the slow, ironic kind. The relieved kind. The "someone finally said it" kind. 2 weeks later, I watched from my porch as a real crew, not Suncoast, came in with saws and excavators. They cut out the bad run, dug down to honest dirt, set the new pipe to spec. I stood with Diaz at the edge of the trench while he checked slopes. "Funny thing," he said. "HOA president asked me if I knew any reputable local concrete guys for the new aprons." I snorted. "You tell him I charge extra when the job comes with drama?" Diaz chuckled. "Told him to call you. Up to you if you want it." I thought about Brittany's late-night circus, the fines, the whispers. Then I looked at that open trench, clean and honest for the first time in years. "I'll pour it," I said, "but I'm writing the contract this time. The job paid well enough. Covered my wasted time, my stress, and then some. My truck kept its logo. My trailer stayed in the driveway, now without orange stickers or security creeps photographing it." Neighbors started waving again. A couple even crossed the street just to say, "We're glad you didn't back down." I went back to work. Early mornings, late pours, mud on my boots. Not a board seat, not a crusade. Just doing what I do, making sure water goes where it should and concrete does what it's told. Still, on quiet nights when the storms roll in, I hear that old, ugly clang in my head, the sound of that valve at 2:13 a.m. Not from fear anymore, from memory. Because that was the night they figured they'd break the contractor house, and instead broke their own little empire. And even with Brittany gone, there was one thing I couldn't shake. If they were willing to cut corners this hard on buried pipe, what else were they hiding in the paperwork above ground? Hit the like button if you think HOA boards should be held to the same standards as any contractor, because what I found next, buried in their contracts, made that bad drain look almost honest. After the dust settled and the new pipe was in the ground, life on Cattail Court got quiet in a way it hadn't been since I moved in. The new crew did clean work. Proper bedding, correct cover, inspections that actually meant something. When they were ready for concrete, I backed my truck into my own driveway, legally, logo and all, and poured the aprons and panels Brittany had tried so hard to keep me away from. Funny thing, the same neighbors who'd once crossed the street to avoid my contractor house now brought me coffee and asked real questions. So all this, Mark said one morning, nodding at the fresh sidewalk, was because they cheaped out on a repair? Pretty much, I said. Bury junk, you get junk. Concrete tells on you eventually. Word spread that Brittany had resigned. Official story was burnout, time to focus on family. Unofficially, everyone had seen the timestamp on that projector screen and heard, clear as a bell, if anybody inspects this, we're screwed. Her HOA badge disappeared. So did the security patrol's slow-roll photo ops in front of my driveway. The orange sticker stopped. The fines vanished from my ledger like bad chalk off a job site board. Instead, I started getting different knocks on my door. Hey, Hank, a guy from 2 streets over said, cap in hand, you think you could look at our walkway? It's starting to tilt toward the inlet. Or, my dad's in a chair. That panel out front is killing him. Can I hire you? What does the HOA own my front yard now, too? I'd walk out, check the slope, tap the slab with my boot. You own your concrete, I'd say. They own the story they tell about it. Don't let him mix the two. I didn't run for the board. People floated it. We need someone like you on there, but I've seen what power does to folks who like meetings more than mud. I stuck with what I know, rebar, forms, finish. The city wrapped their investigation with a thick report that landed in the HOA's inbox like a dropped manhole cover. Non-compliant repair, improper supervision, failure to maintain sealed valves, recommended corrective action, full replacement at HOA expense, with a side order of and by the way, your carrier is watching now. They got hit with a big deductible and a mandate to review all their cost-saving contracts. Suncoast's name quietly stopped appearing on any job within city limits. Amazing what a little camera at 2:13 a.m. can do to a company's referral pipeline. Financially, the board tried to soften it. We're absorbing as much as we can, Doug said in a follow-up meeting, which is HOA speak for, everyone's dues are going up and nobody's getting a new fountain this year. People grumbled, but they knew exactly who to blame. And it wasn't the guy in the work boots who tried to fix a sidewalk. One evening, after the new concrete had cured and the grass along the trench was starting to stitch itself back together, I was sitting in my garage, wiping down tools when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Local area code. The text was short. You didn't just expose drainage. Check the board's vendor contracts from the last 5 years. Start with landscaping and security. Same pattern. A neighbor who's tired of watching. I stared at the message for a second, then out at the lake. Water slid smooth into the new outfall, clean and quiet. The neighborhood looked perfect again. Trimmed hedges, fresh paint, kids on scooters tracing safe, even slabs. Underneath all that beige and stucco, though, I knew how fast things could go rotten when nobody's looking. One bad repair. One friend of a friend contractor. One HOA officer more worried about image than infrastructure. I thumbed back a single reply. Got it. Then I walked to my little office, opened the drawer where the blue-taped HOA folder lived, and set a new, empty one beside it. Different color tape. Same Sharpie, new word. Contracts. I'm not a lawyer. I don't dream about bylaws. But I do know a padded invoice when I see one, and I know what it looks like when the same names keep showing up on jobs that keep failing the same way. Out in the cul-de-sac, the board was already advertising for a new community standards director. Fresh face. Same lanyard. Maybe they'll hire someone honest. Maybe they'll find another Brittany with better media training. Either way, the cameras over my driveway are still rolling. The drainage is finally right, and the guy they try to paint as a problem has a better view of their foundation than they think. In that neighborhood, the war with the HOA was over. But for those who know the system from the inside, they know there's always another committee president somewhere who thinks they're above the law. Subscribe to the channel and watch the